I have one doozy of a story to tell you about how I got to see my team live after 20 years of not doing so. But for this story to make full sense, I have to give you a quick rundown of San Lorenzo's history. In the late 19th century, soccer, or football as it is known worldwide, was brought to South America from England, where it became the most popular sport instantly. It was commonplace to see kids playing all manner of versions of the sport, with all manner of alternate rules in the streets of Buenos Aires. One such set of kids, led by Federico Monti, called themselves Los Forzosos de Almagro, the strong men of Almagro. Almagro being the name of the neighborhood they came from. In 1907, they issued a challenge to all comers, boldly stating that you have to bust yourself completely to beat us. Hay que romperse todo para vencernos. And true to their name, they beat all manner of opposing teams in their day. 1 year later, a Catholic priest by the name of Lorenzo Massa decided to allow these kids to practice and play their sport inside his church, to keep kids from the dangers of playing in the streets where they could potentially become hoodlums or get hurt by passing vehicles. The grateful kids eventually changed the name of their group to San Lorenzo de Almagro in honor of their benefactor, while at the same time keeping the nod to their neighborhood roots. It is said that Massa did not want the club to be named after himself, and only accepted this change on condition that the club should be called San Lorenzo not in his own honor, but after St. Lawrence the Martyr. In 1916, the club, by then a neighborhood staple, opened the stadium in the heart of then Almagro, today known as the Boedo neighborhood. The stadium would be known as El Gasometro. This would be San Lorenzo's home for the next 65 years. And now for the sad part of the story. There's a reason virtually every song in the San Lorenzo repertoire contains lyrics about returning to Boedo.
Yo quiero la banda de fiesta y en pedo, sabemos que vamos a volver a Boedo. Yo te prometo que muy pronto volveremos a levantar los escalones en Boedo. Vamos chicos. Es que lo merecemos, la verdad que lo merecemos, la verdad que lo merecemos.
In 1979, with San Lorenzo in bad economic shape and owing money, and the then military dictatorship of Argentina, in an effort to shut down organized dissent against their government, and under the pretext of there being too many stadia in Buenos Aires, took advantage of San Lorenzo's bad management at the time and expropriated most of the club's territory containing the stadium. At the time, the excuse was that a superhighway had to be built there. From 1981 to 1984, the government held on to the property, demolishing the old stadium, and then in 1985 they auctioned it off to Carrefour, the French supermarket chain. 1979 would be the last time San Lorenzo would be allowed to play a game in their own stadium. It was a tearful 0-0 draw versus Boca Juniors. From then onward to the time of my childhood, San Lorenzo had always played their home matches in Vélez Sarsfield Stadium. And this is where my story begins. You see, in the late 90s, by the time I had already left Argentina, a new stadium had been built in literally the worst neighborhood they could have possibly stuck a stadium, El Bajo Flores. I suspect that the price for such a project must have been relatively cheap. Today, the only remotely nice-looking thing in that neighborhood is the stadium. It is surrounded by shantytowns in every direction, and it is generally considered a shady area of town where one must never tread. It's in such a terrible location that cab drivers generally avoid the place and will even charge you a premium just to take you there. And that's even if you manage to find one willing to drive you there in the first place. This was my challenge after buying the tickets. How the heck am I going to get to this place? I bought a ticket at the main office the day before our match versus Independiente. Just me, alone. The rest of my family had not yet arrived to Buenos Aires, so it was up to me to find a way to not only get to the stadium on the 11th, but more difficult still, to return from there alive and well. You see, upper management decided to set the game at 8:30 p.m. Brilliant! In the middle of the night in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods of the city. Great call there, guys. Boedo is located straight on the E line of the Buenos Aires subway system. From there you can take the subway to the very end, the Plaza de los Virreyes, and then from there take the tram to the lower and shadier sides of town. Being the touristy first-timer guy that I was, my idea was to simply get off the tram and follow anyone and everyone wearing a San Lorenzo shirt and get off where they get off, and hopefully be led to the stadium without anyone being the wiser. The match was to begin at 8:30 p.m., but I gave myself a whopping 5-hour buffer to give myself time to walk and find the place and film and take pictures and what have you. And as luck would have it, one guy on my tram was wearing a San Lorenzo shirt. So this gentleman gets off 3 stations after Virreyes. The trip seemed oddly short to me, but I decided to get off where he got off, and I followed him from a distance. To my dismay, this guy was not walking towards the stadium as I hoped he would. This guy was leading me deeper and deeper into a shanty town, which was getting progressively uglier with every step I took. Once I was deep inside this ghetto, I started getting followed myself by some creepy-looking guy who was walking uncomfortably close to me, looking like he'd just dropped his life savings on a final hit of acid he was ever gonna take before dropping dead. At this point, I decided to just hightail it back to the tram station and attempt to walk the rest of the way. Turns out I was a good 15 blocks away from where I needed to be. So eventually, I finally made it there. There I was, paradise for a raven.
This is the outskirt of the stadium. That's where associates get to get their tickets. And the stadium is that way. That's where I'm going to be walking in a few minutes here. The buildings are all in our colors.
By the way, San Lorenzo's fans are called ravens, and the raven is used as our mascot for one reason and one reason alone. Lorenzo Massa was a priest, and priests were commonly known as ravens back in the day for the way they dressed. Being a huge benefactor to the club, the fans just decided to call themselves ravens as a result. San Lorenzo has a ton of other colorful nicknames, like El Ciclón, the Cyclone, which is due to the fact that their historical rival is Huracán, the Hurricane. Los Santos, the Saints for obvious reasons. Matador, the Killer, a nickname that comes from our 1968 campaign, when we became the first team in Argentine soccer to win the National Cup undefeated. All of these nicknames appear in our chants at one point or another. Entering the stadium was a chore. Turns out, once again, I made another mistake, and I entered through the wrong side of the stadium. My ticket is for the top seats, and I had entered through what is called La Popular, or the popular entrance. Unbeknownst to myself, the stadium is segregated. The popular is where the hooligan contingent enters. The Argentine Football Association has a hard time with hooliganism. It's a disease they're still trying to deal with to this day.
Now, today we only have the home crowd. I'm told here by my new friends that I made that as of last year, a visiting crowd is not allowed.
That's a video for another day, however. As one guy noticed that I had a valuable higher-priced entrance ticket, and he asks me if he could use my ticket to sneak his kid into the game, even though there weren't any kids remotely near him. So I quickly just backed him off with a quick, "Tomatela, flaco, get the hell away from me, dude." And I finally make it to my seat. By this time I have just about an hour and a half to burn before the game begins. So I decide to look around me and see if there's any friends I can make while I'm here.
I, however, am seated up here, and where if it rains, it won't rain on me. Pay a little extra for the privilege.
This is Francisco.
I even made a few friends here.
Hi everyone.
This guy is a Phoenix Suns fan, if you can believe that.
From Argentina, yes. I'm San Lorenzo fan, of course.
Well, yeah.
This guy over here out of the corner of the camera is Matias.
And he speaks a little bit of English too.
After chatting about my trip, the team, and all manner of subjects here and there, sports related and non, they tell me how foolish I am for coming to this side of town with a camera in tow, of all things. It was like I was begging to be mugged. They also warned me that once the game was over, I was pretty much in danger. At 11 p.m. on this side of town, no cab was ever going to stop for me. So I asked them if maybe I could bum a ride to a safe side of town where I could grab a cab, and they agreed. Cool people that they were. My ticket was for Section D, Row 3, Seat 11. But while I was talking to these nice folks behind me, I kinda shifted to a different seat, to Row 3, Seat 15. I didn't know it at the time, but this seat belonged to a paying club member, one Angel Celayeta. I had asked the folks around me if it was okay to be seated someplace else, and they assured me that it wouldn't be an issue. About 30 minutes before the game, this gentleman shows up. He looks at me all serious-like and tells me that this seat belongs to him. I knew this wasn't my seat, but I wasn't expecting him to show me that this seat literally belonged to him. Well, we had a few laughs and we became fast friends. Turns out Angel was in the running for the club's presidency at one point. And knowing what a die-hard fan I was simply from seeing my enthusiasm and excitement, to the point where I pretty much risked my life and own safety to be here, he showed me around the place. And he even introduced me to...
Él tiene un canal en YouTube, ¿sabes?
This is San Lorenzo's president.
Bueno, un saludo para todos. En Arizona, ¿es?
Sí.
Bueno, acá estamos con el amigo Eric. Un abrazo para todos.
I'll translate that for you later.
Gracias, Matu.
Gracias.
What's your opinion?
It's awesome. I had a good time so far.
I tell you, he's my friend.
Oh yeah. All you have to do is look a little bit further.
I told you, he's my friend. He's a very good friend.
What's even better is, the evening ended up as a victory for us. It was a 1-0 victory over Independiente.
¡Sí, lo filmé!
Man, that was so awesome. And I got to have an interesting story to tell, all because I got lost on the way to the stadium and then I sat in the wrong seat. Once the game ended, Angel did the impossible. He managed to get me a cab. Magic happens sometime. Literally. The guy is a magician! He cast his most impressive spell when he conjured me up a cab in the place where none would have appeared otherwise. So, 11 days later, I came back to the stadium to witness our sad elimination from the South American Club Cup, this time with my family in tow. But you know what? I don't leave disappointed, because I had the time of my life, winning or losing. We sang the entire time without ending. When we were losing, we only sang louder and happier. Because of this beautiful experience, I'm more a Raven today than I ever was before. Thank you, San Lorenzo. Someday we're going to return to Boedo, and I hope to be there when we do.
Quisieron privatizarte, pero yo a vos no te vendo. Nos siguen diciendo que estamos de